I'm David McIntosh, president of AIGA Richmond, and we are happy to present our first speaker of the year, actually, Doug Rosenberg from Unbox Technologies, going to be talking about Agile and how designers and developers can use it to make better products faster and not kill each other in the process, which is a very important thing.
Yep.
Just a few words about AIGA. We are AIGA. We are the Professional Association for Design. We are one of 66 chapters across the country. If you want to know more about us, there's a little pamphlet out there that folds out into a poster, and it has all the information that you need on how to become a member and how to become more involved in AIGA here in town and AIGA across the country. So please take a moment to pick one up on the way out if you don't already have one. Also, you received an event survey card when you came in. Be sure to fill that out after the presentation is over, and we'll be collecting them during the Q&A period for some drawings at the end of the evening, and
nice.
Some pretty good drawings. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Doug. Please put your hands together for Doug.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you all for coming out. I love this size group because I think it can be interactive and fun. I have notes in front of me. I was told there's no podium. I'm going to carry these around. They don't look like too much of a nerd. Tell me a little bit about myself. My name is Doug Rosenberg. I've written it over there in case you forget. Went to college as a graphic artist. Failed my first art class. Left college with a computer science degree. Wrote software for about 7 years. I did IVR development for Capital One here in town. 2005, 2006, somewhere around there, late 2005. Agile was kind of taking off at Capital One. I was in kind of the second wave of coaches that got trained. So the guy that came in and trained me for Agile, a guy by the name of Ken Schwaber, wrote a pretty notable book on Agile software process development. So I'm sort of one step removed, and I did Agile coaching, Agile consulting, sort of off the side of my desk there for about 7 years with Capital One. I'm now with Unbox Technology as a business analyst, so I'm sort of, as you can see, I'm sort of not really good at any of those things, so that qualifies me to stand up here and teach, because those who can't do teach, right? My wife's a math teacher, so don't tell her I said that. I'm gonna get this out of the way right up front. I want to get some stereotypes out of the way right here. I'll move sides, excuse me. How do designers perceive developers? So what I want to get out of this conversation today, sort of take you down the relationship between designers and developers, sort of what has historically been true, or sort of how are the two competing for things at times? What can Agile do to solve that? And in the middle, I want to give sort of 20 minutes. I want to take about 20 minutes to introduce what Agile is. Quick show of hands, how many would call yourselves, you can raise your hand more than once. How many would call yourselves a designer? And how many would call yourselves a developer? Again, you can half raise your hand, it's all right. I want to know where to throw the punchlines, right? Like if I'm going to make fun of a lot of people, developers are going to get made fun of now. Small population, and how many of you have ever worked on an Agile project or been on as part of an Agile team?
Never.
Oh, wow. How many have ever?
Oh, ever.
Ever. How many have ever? I will speak more clearly. Really, that's awesome. So this, I think if that's the case, I'm going to spend an extra 5 minutes sort of focusing on what Agile is and how it is supposed to work. I'm getting head nods a couple places. I'm not married to this. We can spend 90 minutes talking about Agile if that's what you want, but I want to talk a lot about what Agile does for the relationship between designers and developers. So we'll definitely get to that. But I'll throw in an extra. I got an extra exercise that we'll actually do, so you can see a little mini sort of Agile team in action. Remind me when I get there. So this is it, right? Like designers have this perception of developers that they're They're sort of rigid and they're unimaginative and a little bit nerdy, let's say. Flip the tables. Developers have a perception of designers. They're a little bit immature, a little bit childish, a little bit sort of, they're not in touch with the real world. They don't understand how to actually turn pretty pictures into real code, right? Like, developers have a real job and designers don't. You hear that a lot. It's absolutely insane, right? The relationship between the two is a lot like two rally drivers in a car. You've got a driver and a navigator in the same car in a rally race. Both are worthless without one another, right? You need the two together, and you need to get those two working together to be successful in your organization. So that's where we hope to get today. So where do these stereotypes come from? I think my observation is that designers and developers are competing for two different goals traditionally in software development. Designer has the goal of developing something or putting something in front of the client that just wows them, right? It's visually appealing, and it sets the tone for the entire software development project. From the day you send that concept drawing over there, that's the expectation of the client, is that you're going to wow them. Developers are put in this box of, hey, well, there's some really, really strict timelines, and we have some budget constraints, and we have technology considerations, and we have all these things that prevent us from being able to implement anything and everything. So developers are often competing for a different space from designers. And so what can happen, worst case scenario, is a designer pitches something to a client which literally cannot be built. Super uncomfortable place for a developer to be, right? You got to go back with your tail between your legs and go back to that client and say, guess what, we can't do this. Either because of technology, timeline, budget, one of those things, right? There's a lot of factors that can go into it. And the end result is the two want to kill each other. It's just not a good place to be. However, designers and developers share a goal, which is better UI and UX, right? User interface, user experience. I'm going to just make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So enter Agile. Brief history of Agile. David, I said I was going to the whiteboard only once. I lied. I did make it something like 6 minutes without going to the whiteboard, so this is really good for me. You're about to see why I failed my first art class. Is that a jellyfish? No, it is a, anyone? Umbrella. An umbrella! All right. Thank you. I've gotten jellyfish a lot. Agile is an umbrella term. Agile covers a lot of different practices and methodologies. There's XP, extreme programming. There is Crystal, which is another form of Agile. There is LSD, thank you, is lean software development. I'm sure that's what you were all thinking. Crystal, LSD, I'm just throwing it out there. Funny you say that, right? So Agile was born, basically a bunch of hippies got together and went to a ski resort in Utah, and they said there's got to be a better way to build software. They came out, it was based a lot on a Harvard Business Review article, if you ever want to look it up. It's called The New Product Development Game, 1981, somewhere in that neighborhood. Agile's not new. This idea that we're going to do something different or that we're going to iterate is not new. Agile, the folks who put together the Agile Alliance.org had this great business plan, but the selling of this methodology that we're going to iterate in small cycles and that we're going to try stuff out and see what works and adapt to change quickly is really not new. So they got together, they put together this manifesto, and we'll see what that manifesto looks like soon, and decided there should be a better way to write software. This is the way that everybody knows how to work. We take requirements. Requirements then feed our design. Design feeds our implementation. This is where developers come in. You guys play mostly in this space. Developers play mostly in this space. Then we test it. Then we roll it out and maintain it. Pardon me. Let me get a more correct design. We do this, right? We always cut short testing. And we accept this to be true. And what that means is it puts a lot of pressure to get us right here, right? These two things have to be correct. Puts even more pressure on designers and developers to build the right thing the first time. Tell me what's good about this.
Nothing.
Nothing. Why do you say that?
Well, there's no iterative feedback loop in the design process.
An iterative feedback loop.
Yeah, I teach.
You must have been one of the people who raised their hand and said they were on an Agile team. Anyone else? What's good about this?
Everybody knows their place.
Everyone knows their place. Everyone knows their role, right? Very clear gates. It's very clear deliverables. I really understand what feeds this to this to this, right? What else?
Working to the same end.
We're all working to the same end? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, we're all trying to get to the implement, to the rollout and end the project. Everybody ought to be able to work together to get to that end.
Okay, so we share a goal of the deadline, probably. We hope that we share a vision for what success looks like. I've been on lots of projects where that hasn't been the case, and it's raised some concerns. What's bad about this? You said nothing's good. What's bad?
Well, it's kind of a fact that's not real. That there's no arrow coming out of the maintenance.
It's not real.
If it were honest, there'd be an arrow out of the maintenance box that would
Start again. That would start again. That would come back.
That would go back at least to implementation because bugs are discovered that the product is wrong. Right?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It doesn't look very collaborative.
It doesn't look very collaborative, does it? It doesn't have to be very collaborative. I can have my requirements gatherer in California, my designer in Connecticut, and my developer in Mumbai, and it really doesn't matter, right? That's okay. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's a statement.
There's no box that says user.
No box that says user. I think I know where you're going with that. Tell me more about that.
Well, there's
Late people have to sing. Does everyone know this? And sit up front.
We take requests.
Nice. Tell me a little more about that. There's nothing.
Where I guess the requirements perhaps assume that there's some analysis of the user, their environment. Are they involved at all?
Okay. I like that you said that. Tell me, if you're the customer, and let's say that this project spans somewhere 12 to 18 months. That's a typical software project. Web design is probably a little faster, let's say 6 to 9 months. If you're a customer, what kind of behavior does this drive? If I told you you have this box, this amount of time to define requirements, and then you can go take a nap, and then I'll give you your thing.
Change if it takes that long to get to the end, and the environment that you work in changes, you can't change.
If it takes that long to get to the end, I don't know if everyone heard, the environment might change. A lot of things can change, right? Variables can change. Environmental variables can change. Anyone that wrote a mortgage software application in September of 2008 got really surprised, right? Holy crap, something just happened. We want to be flexible. We want to be able to respond to change. If I'm a customer and you tell me I get one shot to build my requirements, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to put everything I can think of in that requirements box, right? I'm going to put every feature that I might imagine any user might ever want, and I'm going to put it in the requirements box, and I'm going to end up with Microsoft Excel. Right? Who uses all those features? They're in there for a reason, because someone built it and someone said there's one use case for this one customer, and I'm going to build that thing. This is where we live. This is what we're used to, and this is the way that we're accustomed to seeing. So what's different about Agile? Agile says, and let me explain this chart, because if you know nothing about Agile, this will look super weird to you. Agile says that we are going to iterate. We're going to work for 2 to 4 weeks. We have a giant backlog of requirements. I can still have my same box of requirements. I'm going to work for 2 to 4 weeks, and at the end of this iteration, I'm going to have some set of features done. Done. Done means potentially ready to go to production, shippable. Done, right? I may release, I may not. If I don't, I'm going to go have another iteration, and I'm going to add some more features. And there's a customer in here, and we're going to get to the roles, and we're going to get to a lot of this in a bit. There's a customer in here who decides, you know what? We've gone through 3 of these 2-week cycles. I now feel like we have enough features to release. So we'll release, and then we start again. If I'm a customer and I know I get to change my requirements potentially every 2 weeks, what do you think happens? I get a better product, leaner. Tell me why you chose that word.
More niche-oriented.
Niche-oriented, okay.
That doesn't do like, everything in the kitchen sink.
So lean, she threw out the word lean. If anyone has heard the word lean, lean and agile often go together. Lean, it comes from manufacturing. Toyota Motor Company decided that they had a better way to build cars, and they applied something which is lean manufacturing, which is just-in-time delivery. Only give me the parts that I need for what I need when I need it. And every single person on the production line in Toyota is empowered to stop the line. They can hit the button and stop the line and say, hey, something's broken. They also aim to make process improvements at every single step of the way. So if moving a box of bolts from this side of my desk to this side of my desk makes me 0.6 of a second faster, and I'm doing that thing 100 times a day, I've just improved my process, right? So what lean is not a check the box exercise, it's a way of life, right? It's a mindset that says I'm going to improve my process at every step of the way. And I'm not just going to locally optimize, I'm going to optimize for the whole thing. So lean and agile borrow a lot, and you'll hear those 2 terms mixed up a lot. What's good about, what's bad about this?
Does it depend on early adopters?
Does it depend on early adopters? Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, it comes out a little too early. You've got to get people.
Okay, so the product can be early. There's a risk to releasing something early if it's not well thought out or well formulated. My end consumer might formulate an opinion about this thing based on a limited feature set and dismiss it, right? I put words in your mouth, but is that close?
Exactly. If you go to the blog and they say 1 star, this sucks.
This sucks. Okay, what else is bad about this?
There's no ultimate kind of endpoint.
Never ends, right? This last one was so cool. I know exactly when I'm done. I'm done when my little sliver of testing is done, right? That's when I know I can deliver. And intermittently, the business analysis dude knows when he's done because he's handed off his requirements document, and the designer knows when they're like, everybody knows when they're done. I have no idea when I'm done here. When am I done?
But you have recurring income.
Recurring income. So what you're alluding to is if I did 20 iterations to implement something, and it took me 12 months, and if this takes me 12 months, if I have something after 6 weeks that is built, this time value of money comes in, right? I'm starting to get I've derived some business value. The customer decided that there was enough business value to release. I now get this concept of time value of money. I'm 6 weeks into a 12-month project. All of a sudden, I'm starting to generate some interest, some revenue, something. So if nothing else changed, and David, when he introduced me, used the word faster, and I sort of cringe when people say, Agile makes you go fast. That's not true. Agile can make you go fast. What Agile really says is, let's only build the features that matter. Let's build the most important things first. Let's iterate around them, and let's release when we have enough value, and let's let this time value of money work. So if both projects took 12 months, I didn't save any time, but I made a lot more money, right? Because there's this concept here. All right, so I said a bunch of hippies got together out in Utah and got together. They came up with something called the Agile Manifesto. That's such a crazy word based on the Unabomber. Like when you think about the Unabomber, you think of the word manifesto. It's sort of an unfortunate word, right? But this is what they said. They all got together, they had a bunch of beers, and they said, this is the way that we think we can build software better. And what they said was, we value the things in blue more than we value the things in green. And I'm going to let that sink in for a moment, because people get angry when they see things like this. Does this mean we don't document anything in Agile? No. It just means I value working software over comprehensive documentation. Doesn't mean I don't document anything. It means I document what I need to document to satisfy the team, to satisfy the audit department. I don't know what size organization you all come from. I came from Capital One, huge regulated business. We ran Agile at Capital One successfully, and our documentation oftentimes was literally snapshots of whiteboards. This is our design document. We have an audit department that said, that's good. You know why? Because the audit department says, all you have to do is tell me what you're going to do, show me that you did what you said you were going to do. You guys are good. We'll check it off, right? It's OK. So it doesn't mean we don't document anything. It doesn't mean we never have contracts. It doesn't mean we never follow a plan, right? The other knock on Agile you'll often hear is, you never know how much it's going to cost, you never know how long it's going to take, and you never know when it's going to finish. You're doing it wrong if that's true. All Agile says is, I accept that there's going to be some change in this project. I can tell you with a lot of precision what's going to happen 6 weeks from now. Oops, I went the wrong way. Oh, you saw like the next slide, I don't know what to do. I can tell you with a lot of precision what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks. I can take a pretty good guess at what's going to happen the 6 weeks after that. I have no clue what's going on in this iteration out here, and I'm not going to pretend to tell you that I do. Traditional waterfall projects pretend, right? The day that we write that project plan, everybody's super proud of it, and we say, here's our delivery date. Well, how many times do we ever make that delivery date? It's a number approaching 0, right? So take a look at this. This one is where we're going to actually focus today. I value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. It says I'm going to put people in the room and I'm going to teach them to talk to each other. Oh my God, we have to talk to each other? I'm going to teach them to talk to one another. I'm going to teach them to communicate. And I'm going to hopefully get a better product. You mentioned better product. I'm hopefully going to get a better product. So I talked about Agile being an umbrella term. The last one is Scrum. Anyone a rugby fan? There's more rugby fans than with Agile experience? What's going on here? What's a Scrum in rugby? You all go like this. It is, yes, eight players or so from opposing sides having a polite discussion about possession of a ball, right? The reason why it's called Scrum is if you watch a rugby game and you see a Scrum, it looks like utter chaos. It's a bunch of big sweaty dudes with their arms around each other, shoving each other around. It looks like chaos from an outsider. Each of those people in that scrum have a role and a purpose, and together they move toward a common goal, which is possession of the ball. So that's what Scrum is. That's where Scrum comes from. Scrum is a way to implement that iteration. 80%, roughly, I've heard this number thrown out, that there are 80% of companies are doing some form of Agile in some way or another. By show of hands in this room, that looked like a lie. I've always felt like I was a little bit high. However, what I do believe is of the 80% or so who are doing Agile, I have heard that, I read that 80% are doing Scrum. Scrum and Agile are often used interchangeably, so if you hear either of those words, particularly around Richmond, I only know of one shop around town that does a little bit of XP, which has a lot of paired programming and things like that. Scrum is what you'll see, and this is the way Scrum works. So for the context of this conversation, I'm going to use the words Agile and Scrum interchangeably. So what does Scrum say? Scrum says I'm going to take my product backlog. My product backlog is everything that I might ever want to do. Every single requirement I might ever have is in my product backlog. And it's awesome. I can add to it anytime I want to. I can prioritize it anytime I want to. Every 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, I'm going to take some portion of my product backlog and I'm going to work it. I'm going to pick a handful of features, whatever that might be. 1 feature, 3 features, I don't care. I'm going to take some portion of that and I'm going to work it. For 2 to 4 weeks, I'm going to work. Work means I'm going to collect requirements, design it, develop it, test it, and potentially ship it. It's important, right? I'm going to do that. Every 24 hours, I'm going to have what's called a daily Scrum meeting. Some people call it a daily stand-up, if you've ever heard of that. They call it a stand-up because you literally stand up. It is meant to be short. It is meant to allow your peers and your teammates to connect around the work. Looks a little bit weird when you walk in a room the first time you've seen it, but it makes sense once you get involved in it. So every 24 hours, I'm going to meet around the work. Work days only. We don't work on weekends. Do this for 2 to 4 weeks. At the end, we have potentially shippable product. That sounds pretty cool. Tell me what is challenging about this, or what might be challenging about this. Control issues. Wow. That's awesome. What does that mean?
Somebody wants their idea implemented and somebody else.
Somebody wants their idea implemented and somebody else. Okay, so Agile protects us from that. There is one person who decides what goes here, and there is one person who decides what goes here. That person is called the product owner. They are the customer in the room. They're probably not the person signing the check. It's very rare that you see that person as the customer, but there's a single ringable neck of who decides what we work on. Now, an Agile team can get taken over a cliff really quickly, because if that one person doesn't understand business priority or doesn't have a good grasp on what the product is, you can get yourself in trouble, but okay, that's good. What else? What kind of impact might this have on a designer? Details. What do you mean by that?
Little things get lost in the pace.
Little things get lost because of the pace, did you say?
Quick pace.
Quick pace. Okay. Possible?
So sometimes it takes more than 24 hours to fully develop a design concept. So
I don't have enough time, right? I never have enough time to develop it. There's always time to do it over and never time to do it right. Yes?
Maybe they're not getting a full picture. They're designing for a specific functionality or something like that.
Let me say what I think I heard you just say, which is I can potentially get blinders around this one thing, and I lose sight of what the whole, yeah. Yes?
If I'm a designer, I'm a specialist on the team potentially, and I may not always have something to do with it.
Yes. She said if I'm a designer, I might not have anything to do on day 1 of this 2 to 4 week. Just got so quiet. What just happened? I might not have anything to do here, right? If I'm a developer, what am I doing on the first day? Geez, I don't know. Sitting around waiting for someone to hand me a design, right? And that's what I'm used to doing. It's hard. It's hard to feel like I'm adding value while I'm waiting for this cycle to spin up. And the way that most teams show up is the natural evolution to Agile looks like this. You do a little mini waterfall within 2 weeks, right? Scrummerfall, we call it. Super easy to fall into that trap of I'm going to do this little mini thing. The way I coach teams is this, and it's so easy for me to stand in front of a whiteboard and talk about this, but the way I coach teams is if I'm baking a cake, I have 4 different layers of my cake. We traditionally bake the layers of the cake 1 layer at a time. What Agile says is bake me a slice of cake. I don't care how narrow the slice of cake is, but in 2 to 4 weeks, bake me a slice of cake. Give me everything. Give me something that I can put in front of the customer. That's super hard to get to, and teams don't get there in iteration 1. What happens in iteration 1 is everybody overcommits and you fail. I guarantee, I'll bet you my next paycheck, the first Agile team you're on, iteration 1 will fail. You'll overcommit and fail, and that's okay. And iteration 2, you'll also overcommit and fail. But the good news is by iteration 3, you won't. You will normalize and you'll figure out what happens.
You used the word customer.
I did.
And I always think of users, but
Yep.
in your terminology, the customer is someone who is supplying software.
Customer is the person writing the check.
Right, so that's a client.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that's a
Yep, that's right. Client, customer, interchangeable.
one degree of remove. Sometimes I was thinking you were talking about the end users. But
No, users, end users, consumers, I'll use those words. Customer, client, the business. Some people in bigger organizations, you'll hear it called the business, they're the customer. Yep.
right.
Any other questions? You guys are so easy. So what makes up an Agile team? I talked about the product owner. That's that single ringable neck. There's this person, the Scrum Master. A lot of organizations make the leap that if I have a project manager, I will just make that person a Scrum Master and everything will be great. That doesn't always work. Skills are very, very different. Scrum Master is responsible for making sure that we follow this process. The Scrum Master is the person who protects the team from having too much crap get into this pile. The Scrum Master is the person that makes sure this thing happens. The Scrum Master is the person that makes sure that we end up with this at the end. They're really responsible for making sure that we follow the process. If you're not the product owner and you're not the Scrum Master, what are you? Scrum team, that's weird. Where are the designers? Where are the developers? Where are the testers? Whoa. We just gave them all one giant name, right? We're a team. That sucks. You mean I gotta talk to each other? We're gonna have to talk to each other? We are, right? What Scrum says is, and the way I coach teams is like this, you bring your skills with you into the project and you leave your title at the door. Does it mean that all designers need to learn to write code? No, absolutely not. In fact, when I wrote code as a developer, when I had to design something, I was always coding it in my head as I was designing it, right? I was totally constrained by the code, and I wasn't sort of free to design. So, but it does say that there are some folks that might have some other skills. If we get to the end of the iteration and we need an extra person to do testing, can a designer test? Can a developer test? Developers are terrible testers. But can other people come in and test? I hope so, right? There are a lot of people that have a lot of skills that might not be revealed. What the Scrum format says is I'm going to bring all of the skills in to accomplish my 2 to 4 week iteration or my project. And if I don't have the right skills, the Scrum Master is going to call it out. They're going to say, hey, we need a database guy. We need a something. I don't know what skill. Like you'll often see database engineers are typically the ones that aren't part of a core Scrum team. They get called in for some period of time. And they do this thing. Something happens magical in the back end, right? And the database is up and running, and then we're ready to go. What this presents, I think, is just a brand new opportunity for designers and developers to work together. It's a new framework. It's sort of this a way that we can get together and drive conversations and drive collaboration that we didn't have before. You guys seen that commercial where there's the dude sitting at the table of kids? He's in like an elementary school classroom. It's for some kind of cell phone company. Like, which is better, faster or slower? Right? You hate them?
I hate them.
Oh my God, I love them.
You must be the target market.
I am the target market, right? Yeah, I'm shaking. They are I don't want them to be staged. I know that they are. Like, I rationalize in my head that they're not, that it's very organic. That the kid, like, my favorite is, I'm going to tape a cheetah. Like, how do I get my grandmother to move faster? I'm going to tape a cheetah to her back, right? Like, it's that kind of sort of free-spiritedness that I love seeing in designers. It's been my experience working, I've been on Box close to a year, and I got a great chance to work with 2 visual designers who are fantastic. They are free to design exactly what they want because they're not constrained by that code. It's so fantastic to kind of watch them be free and develop. And the funny thing is, when you let a designer design something that doesn't have code or a platform in mind, you end up with a really awesome problem to solve as a developer. Developers actually like that, right? You're giving them puzzles, you're giving them new challenges. If a developer designs something, he's going to code it in his head and it's going to come out like a developer designed it. When a designer and developer can work together, you end up with just this amazing product. And Scrum, I think, really kind of drives that. So am I comparing designers to children? No. It's just that there's this freedom of design. I think when you take the 2 skills and you marry them together, you can get a really powerful product. Of course, it would really help at some point if I knew what was possible in the platform, right? So taping a cheetah to my grandmother's back, awesome idea. A lot of problems with it, right? How do you catch the cheetah, for one? But it's hard, right? A lot of problems, and as a designer, I kind of want to know, right? I don't want to design scratch and sniff buttons and find out they don't work in IE7. I need to know. I need to talk to that developer, and I need to understand what the constraints are of my platform. And Scrum sort of facilitates this very, very well. What it does is it sets up, when we go back to that, at the core of Scrum, geez, so many secrets. At the core of Scrum is this iteration. And what this says is for 2 to 4 weeks, as a designer, you kind of hit on it, I'm going to get a chance to test out my, I'm sorry, it was you. I'm going to get a chance to test out my designs, but I don't have a lot of time to make sure that they're fully thought out. I think it was sort of both of your comments. Do they fit into the big picture? And do I have that vision? Do I have enough time? But Scrum doesn't solve for that. It sets up an opportunity for a team to have this discussion. Well, what it means is that as designers, you have to sort of retool your toolkit and understand which features are the highest priority and which features are the most important thing, and go after those first. And we'll do a quick exercise to sort of see how we get there in a second. But it sets up this short iteration and allows us to go ahead and work through. Yeah, go ahead.
The diagram, the Venn diagram.
The Venn diagram, that's the down arrow, not the up.
The owner, the product owner is the client, right?
Yeah, product owner, client, customer, yes.
What about their lack of knowledge or perspective about what's possible and what is good? You know, educating the client, that kind of idea. Designers and developers may know things that are way beyond the client.
Yeah, so the question is, what happens when the designers and developers, who I'll call the subject matter experts, know a lot more about what is possible than the customer? Help me understand the conflict. I don't see a conflict there. I see an opportunity to educate the customer.
I guess that's all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah. Remember, I'm iterating every 2 to 4 weeks. I rarely have a chance to close that feedback loop with both my end user, I hope, maybe. At the very least, I have a chance to close the feedback loop with the client. Agile sets us up in a way that we can close that feedback loop very, very quickly. As a client, I get to see a little sliver of what the thing is going to look like really, really early, and I get a chance to change course quickly if I don't like what I see.
Is there a difference when you work at Capital One where clients may be internal as opposed to when you're working with people who are more remote?
Enormous difference.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between an internal customer and an external customer? An enormous difference. At Capital One,
Relative to the speed of this process.
no, not relative to speed, relative to my accountability to the organization. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. At Capital One, my customer was somebody from that department over there who came in with a problem to solve, and he had fake money with him. It was Capital One money. He came with his pile of fake Capital One money and was like, build me this project. And I'm like, I got it, I can do this for you. There's no accountability. If I fail, we all lose the same pile of fake money and we go out for a fun day together afterwards. It wasn't that hard, right? Now, I've got someone that walks in with a check, a real check, money that pays my paycheck, right? Like, it's not funny money. It's not departmental, oh, we'll just, it's a real client that comes in with a real problem and we have to give them a real solution and you get one chance to do it. So is it different? Yeah, the stakes feel higher to me. The risk is higher. There's a risk of failure, I guess, for lack of a better word. I thrive on it. You might not. I love that. I love how much it pushes me to get the right solution the first time on the right timeline and the right budget. Yeah.
How do you make sure you build the right product?
Good question. How do I make sure I build the right product? You only get one shot, right? There is no second time. How do I make sure I build the right product? That's a hard question. Does anyone have an answer?
What's worked so far?
What do you do? Let me turn it back on the room. This is what I always do with hard questions. What do you do today to make sure that you're building the right product?
I test with real users,
I test with real users. What else?
end users.
Put it out there and get feedback.
Put it out there and get feedback. Seems like I might have a framework to do that. I get customer feedback every 2 to 4 weeks. What else?
I get users to use the product that you
Get it in front.
at the end of 4 weeks.
So it feels like I have a framework to do that too, right? Maybe not at the end of 4 weeks, but at the end of 6 to 12 weeks. I've got this framework where I can get it in front of end users and get feedback. Feels like this might work. Hold on, I like where you guys are going. Right? How do I know that I'm building it the first time? I don't. I have to make some assumptions, but I try and hedge my bets by getting it in front of, getting client feedback as early as possible. The way I coach teams is, it sounds stupid, break it as fast as possible. And that is, you have, in order to break it, you've got to build it. You've got to build the software breaks where it talks to other systems, and software breaks where users do unexpected things. Break it as soon as possible. Give yourself some time to make the changes. Don't save everything up for one giant big bang release at the end, like sort of roll the dice and hope for the best. Build in some feedback loops. Close that feedback loop as much as you can. Whoops, I didn't go far enough. So what's happening? Shh, don't look. I need like Vanna White or somebody like a, what? Yeah, so we talk a little bit sort of about, I've got this tight time constraint, and I've got this idea that I don't have enough time. I never have enough time to design all the features that I want to put into it. So does it mean that I have to design things to be easy to satisfy the developer? No, it doesn't. What it does mean is that I want to collaborate with the developer, sort of understand what techniques, is the layout right to solve the business problem, is sort of the general. I'm going to close the feedback loop with the developer very quickly too. I'm going to go back and get feedback from him or her very quickly and say, hey, does this feel like the right way to solve this problem? The design idea might not be fully fleshed out, but before I get too far down that path, does this feel right? Like, it's sort of quickly checking in and not getting married to just one solution, and not taking change personally, right? I think everybody, designers have sort of favorite fonts and favorite layouts and favorite schemes because they know that they work. And developers have favorite utilities that they use and favorite sort of methods or libraries that they use because they know that they work. And when you get under timeline pressures, you fall back on those things, right? And that's good, like everybody's good. but what this collaboration allows me to do is to hopefully I build in a little bit of innovation. We all sort of have, as much as you'd love to think that your toolbox is very expansive, it's probably not, because you've done a lot of work under timeline pressure and you go back to what works every time. Hopefully this gives me the opportunity to sort of learn from developers and sort of learn some new tips and tricks, if you will. That's a crappy way of saying it, but sort of position yourself to innovate and also learn a little bit. I said I was going to add an exercise. It'll take 12 minutes. You guys want to see, this is sort of the end of the Agile thing. Do you want to see it in action? It will add 12 minutes to your evening. All right, I need a table. And I need 4 volunteers, please. You can come stand in the front of the room. It'll be awesome. Thank you.
I thought you were going to ask us to go get a table.
No. All right. These are my 4 workers. Now I need 4 managers. And to qualify as a manager, you have to have a stopwatch. All right, you're a manager. Congratulations. What is your name?
Mine?
Yes.
Ann Moss. It's a double name.
Ann Moss. Ann Moss, this is your new manager. Congratulations. You may stand right here. You are penny flipper number 1. I need 1 more manager. I need my 4 workers on this side of the table. And let's slide the table up here. I need 4 workers at the table, and I need the 4 managers standing behind them managing, of course. And that's what managers do. They manage. Who's my Ann Moss? What happened?
Was that
We had a social contract and you broke it.
we were talking and introducing us? Because we're girls.
Oh, you want to go to the bathroom together, or how's this going to work?
We were talking about lipstick.
Okay. I need 1 more manager. Who can manage? I need just a stopwatch. Anyone? There you go. I'll hop up here. All right. We're going to start. I'm going to start a new business, and my business is flipping pennies. I have 20 pennies in my hand, and the idea is Ann Moss is going to start off at the table. Thank you. She's going to turn these 20 pennies to be heads up. Ralph will flip them to be tails up. Mike will flip them to be heads up. John will flip them to be tails up. So at the end, we will end up with 20 pennies. This is my deliverable right here. It's 20 pennies. How long do you guys think this is going to take? Total. To get 20 pennies flipped and out the door, delivered. How long will it take?
2 to 4 weeks.
Go! That's the best answer ever. We can do anything in 2 to 4 weeks. That's awesome. 2 to 4 minutes. Any other guesses? Somewhere. 2 to 4 minutes, I heard. Any better guess? I see some head nods. No, people aren't bothered by 2 to 4 minutes. 3 minutes. 30 seconds. Somewhere between 30 seconds and 4 minutes. Well, let's just find out. Managers.
Tell me my role again.
Your role is to put all the pennies so that they are heads up. Managers, stand behind each of your employees, please. Your job is to make sure that your employees are doing their job. I want you to start your stopwatch when...
I'm listening. I'm listening.
One of the 4 of you will mess this up. I want you to start your stopwatch when your employee touches the first penny and stop it when they let go of the last penny. All right? We're going to win. This is a quality penny turning factory, however. So what I'm going to say is if a penny drops on the floor during this process, we will stop and start over. And there will be much shame. Does every manager know what they are supposed to do? One of the 4 of you will mess it up. All right? I do. The penny flippers almost never mess it up.
4 weeks to do it.
Are we ready?
We are ready.
Go.
my God, I'm developmentally delayed.
You stop the watch after.
When your employee at one manager will mess this up, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Wow, he's just off.
That's pretty good at that.
Oh, like you're bad.
Are you gonna pass it, Ralph?
Uh-uh.
I think he was a magician.
Stop. All right, I got, so I'm the customer. You delivered me 20 pennies in 66 seconds. My marker is dying, David. It's your fault. I think we're good, actually, I'm joking. And my time to market was 66 seconds because I got my first value was when you delivered my first package of goodies, which was 20 pennies, 66 seconds. Employee number 1, your time was?
15 seconds.
15 seconds. Employee number 2? 13. We'll just go to whole numbers. Integers, please.
16.
16.
14.
14. All right. So I've hired a Scrum consultant now to come in and help us out because I'm really not pleased with getting 66 pennies to market. That's just not fast enough. I have to compete with the other penny flipping department, which is over there, right? Oh, thank you. Hold on. Let me make sure.
I tested it.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, this time I hired a Scrum consultant. The Scrum consultant comes in and says, we're going to do exactly the same thing that we did, only we're going to do them in batches of 5. So the same process, right? I'm still delivering 20 pennies. Only there's some value in delivering 5 pennies first because I can take those and rub them in the face with my competitor. So this time, everybody's job is the same. Managers, your job is the same. It gets a little bit trickier. Start the watch when your person touches the first penny. Stop it when they touch the last, but we're going in batches of 5. Right? Someone's going to mess this up. What do you guys think is going to happen?
I hope it's Ralph.
Raise your hand if you think you're going to go faster to deliver all 20 pennies.
Oh, you're driving.
19 pennies. Raise your hand if you think they're going to go slower to deliver all 20 pennies. All right, what about individual times? Faster? Raise your hand.
Faster.
Faster, slower? Nobody wants to commit. No one ever does. All right. I accept it. All right, everyone understands their job. We're going to do the same thing. Here we go. Go. When I teach Agile classes, I mix up the coins. I use Canadian pennies, and I use pennies from other countries, and people get really, really mad. They make some assumptions about what the materials look like before they get into the project, right? And then they get surprised. I'm not trying to be a jerk in this one. I'm just trying to illustrate what happens. Oop. 21. Done. Holy crap. 21 seconds to value, 35 seconds to market. Individual times? 21.
I think I messed it up because this document started officially.
Yeah.
13.4.
What is it?
13.4.
Yeah, all right. So, somebody's going to mess it up.
19.
19.
Overall time?
Your employee's time overall, 20. I like that. Wow. So we broke our work into smaller units. We iterated. We broke our work into smaller batches, and look what just happened. I almost cut my time to market in half. That's interesting. Since I'm incented on your time to market, my bonus check depends on it for 19 pennies. Let's play it one more time, but this time we're going to do batches of 1. What do you think is going to happen? Raise your hand if you think time to market will be faster. It's almost like you've been here before. Raise your hand if you think time to market will be slower. Slower. Individual times? Faster. Slower, faster. It's one of those two, I'm pretty sure. All right, managers, your job is the same. When your employee touches the first penny, you start your watch. Not in between. You don't. When they touch the last penny, even if they wait, they're still engaged in the project. Are we ready? Don't let us down. Here we go. Go. Oh, I forgot. I'm supposed to be drinking beer during this. Absolutely. Maybe I should drink more beer. You guys take your time. You guys suck. This never happens this way. 38 seconds. I've never had this happen. It's always faster. It's close. What happened with the individual times?
19 seconds.
19. 31. That sounds more like it. Kristen? 34. 38. So if we are a performance-driven company, if we have performance-based evaluation, somebody's having a conversation, right?
I think it's about the tools, though. The guys didn't have long fingernails.
No, here we go. So what happened? I broke my work into smaller batches, and what happened? Took a little bit longer. I'll call these numbers about the same. Look what happened to my time to value, right? I got a little bit of value. It was a sliver of value, but I got value here. It used to take me 66 seconds to get time to value. Now it takes me 5. It used to take me 66 seconds to get to market. Now it takes me 36 and a half. What happened to my individual times? It blew up, right? Kind of feels.
Everybody but me.
Feels like I put more effort into it, but somehow I went faster. How is that possible?
Because they're overlapping.
They're overlapping. I'm developing a slice of cake, right? I'm building it. I'm baking a slice of cake. That's what Agile says we try to do. Tell me what it was like to be an employee in iteration 1, round 1.
Pressure.
Pressure, why?
Because you've got to set the standard.
Yeah.
Everybody down the line.
What are you worried about in round 1?
That you'll screw up and ruin everybody.
You'll screw up, right? Like you're it. You're the bottleneck. The spotlight is on you for that part of the process, and if you mess it up, the whole organization suffers.
You got the whole process at any given time.
Yep. What was it like to be in your position, John, in round 1?
Well, you had the ticking of the clock.
You were waiting, right?
On the last one, you know.
I'm waiting. All of a sudden it gets to me and oh my gosh, I gotta be this guy that does this thing that saves the day, right? That's the way we construct our teams today. But it gets a little bit worse than that, because the way we really construct our teams is our managers come in and help, and I'm gonna use air quotes there, sorry Brian. Our managers come in and help, and they see that you guys were sitting around, you're doing a lot of waiting. What I'm going to have you two do is go over to the corner of the room and blow up balloons while you're waiting for your turn to flip pennies. And then Ralph will say, hey guys, come on back, I'm ready for you to flip penny. you'll stop your task that you're doing over here, which is blowing up balloons, and you'll come back over here and you'll switch pennies. And management feels really great because we got this balloon blowing project going on over here, which is going really, really well. And I've also got this penny flipping project over here, which is going really, really well, right? And I've totally used my resources really, really well. As an employee, it sucks. There's this concept of task switching, and there's this concept of waste, and I don't really feel like I have the skills or interest in blowing up balloons, but I'm part of the balloon blowing up project in the corner, right? This is the way that we run projects today. So what Agile says is, I'm going to focus everybody. I'm going to sort of throw everybody together. Was there a little bit of waiting in between pennies? Sure. But I'm going to throw all of my people together at this project, and I'm going to finish it. And then I'm going to move on to the balloon blowing up project, and we're going to take this team and keep it together, and we're going to go blow up balloons. That's what Agile says we got to do. Go ahead.
So you're saying R3 is pretty much the optimum?
Is R3 the optimum?
Because, I mean, the time to value is shorter, but what are they going to get?
Maybe nothing. Yeah, but so that's a good point, right? And that's what that third iteration that showed the release was all about. At the end of release 1, I built something which was one completely flipped penny. Maybe there wasn't enough value to go to market with one completely flipped penny, but by the time I get to 2, 3, 4, 5 pennies, which happened in 6, 7, 8 seconds, then maybe there's enough, right? So is this optimal? I don't know. Is this optimal? I don't know. But the great thing is, after 2 to 4 weeks, I get a chance to try it over. And if it doesn't work, we can do something different. There's an important part of the process which I left out, which is this concept of a retrospective. At the end of every iteration, we get together and we talk about what worked and what didn't and what we might change, and we make some adjustments. And that's where Lean and Agile intersect. Lean says we're constantly making process adjustments. Agile says, let's have a retrospective at the end of every iteration and find out what happened, what went well, what didn't. Let's get together and talk through that, and we'll make some micro adjustments. If you can get 1% faster every 2 weeks, unbelievable place to be at the end of the year. You start to make step change differences.
It may be just a function of the experiment, but there's almost like a Taylorist aspect of this where you're just doing one little thing and you're doing it fast. Is there an impact on like employee satisfaction when the jobs get smaller and it's more iterative?
A little bit, yeah. So that's a good question. This is a totally contrived exercise. I hope I'm applying some more skill than flipping a penny. Your question's a great one, though, which is, if I cut the work in such small slivers, am I seeing that big picture? Am I satisfied by what I'm creating in the end? If the answer is no, then do something different. Cut it into pieces that feel right, that give me a chance to participate and sort of show off my skills a little bit. And is this optimal? Probably not. I probably can't keep going at this pace for as long as I can keep going at this pace. I need a little bit of downtime, right? This is probably unsustainable at this pace. And Agile says, let's find the right size block of work, and what they call that in an Agile world is velocity. It's how fast can your team go. Velocity is the number of, I'll just say features. It's the number of features that you can deliver in 2 to 4 weeks. That is your velocity. And no two teams' velocity is the same. And it's all based around skills, and there's lots of environmental factors that go into it, but velocity measures what you're capable of delivering. So Agile has boundaries for that as well. All of this, just so you guys know, I'm throwing this at you. It's been an hour. I'm throwing this at you. This is a 2-day course to, like, Certified Scrum Master. The class that I teach is a 2-day class. There's a ton that goes into this, and there's a ton about planning and estimation and all the things that people knock Agile about. You're getting a lot. You're drinking from a fire hose right now. I get it. That's kind of why I want to do pennies tonight, so that you could at least take, if you take nothing else away, take this. I can cut my work into smaller chunks, and I can deliver it. Do I have to protect the whole vision? Yeah, I do. Sometimes I have to step back and say, we're not building the right things, or we're not keeping track of the architecture, or we're not doing this. But this methodology affords me this opportunity. Thank you all, penny flippers. Thank you, managers. You may return. They're great. Like, I don't know if they deserve applause.
I don't know.
I don't know. You were clearly the top-notch employee. Yeah, no worries. All right. So what happens? We talked a little bit. Sorry, I lost. Now I want this guy again. We talked a little bit about sort of this collaboration between developer and designer. Oftentimes, and it's been my observation, these next few slides that we're going to look at are real examples of problems that I worked at Capital One for 13 years, opportunities that I saw that I have observed sort of at Unbox, and I'm guessing that they are not unique to Unbox, and I'll show you. So sort of, there's this notion that little features that designers throw into designs can become big headaches for developers. And how do we know this? We don't. If I hand the requirements off to the developer and he goes off to build it, and I never talk to him again, I may never learn the difference between how big these little things can be. And I'll show you. The first example is this one. This came up about a month and a half ago, month or so ago. You guys are all designers. I know you see the difference between these two things right away. Developers are like, what? They're the same. Developer came to the designer in our room. I was sitting in the room when this happened because it's so awesome. Because I'm awesome. He said, this takes about 10 minutes to build. This takes about 2 hours to build. Because he had this, and shame on me for not understanding the details enough. This existed already, or it was something that he could lift or borrow or reuse. This was going to have to be completely custom. And for those of you who are a little slow, and maybe I'm the only one, the difference is this, right? Rob, you know, are you going to take that? Yeah, that is awful. Do I need to speak louder or slower, or what's happening here? Slower. The difference is this, right? And what happened is our visual designer walked over to the developer's desk and he said, hey, do you care if I build it this way instead of this way? And she said, no. Save 2 hours on the project, right? Awesome. If that communication, if that relationship didn't exist between those two people, developer would go off and waste 2 hours building this instead of this.
Or build that and not tell you they built that.
Right? That's the other option. Build that and not tell you they built that. And what does that do to the relationship between designer and developer? Awesome, right? That's such a great point. That's what happens. So that's what I'm going to do if I'm a developer. Well, they look about the same, right? Another example, another cool example of this, if this looks familiar to the people who were at work with me this afternoon, we talked about this. This vertical slider right here, visual designer designed it. It's cool. Shows me what percentage of hospital supplies I'm not using. Pretty neat. It was 257 pixels tall. Compositionally, it was beautiful. Best vertical slider I've ever seen. Anyone try and divide 257 into 100 equal parts? What do you get? 2.57 pixels. Now we got a problem, right? The developer came back to the designer, or the designer, I think it was the developer came back to the designer. I'm not taking credit for it, it was really me who noticed it. But came back to the designer and said, hey, if you make this thing 300 pixels tall, I can make each percentage 3 pixels, and the math becomes super easy. Can I develop a 257 pixel vertical slider? I can. I just got to handle the remainders, and I've got to make some compromises and assumptions about what happens when I'm in between fractions. Right? It's not impossible. It's just unnecessarily complicated. Developer came back to the designer and said, if you make this thing 300 pixels tall, I can write it in an hour, right? 2 hours. Really, really cool. Like, really cool to see the relationship between designer and developer. This is how it works. This is it in action, right? So we make these unbelievably stunning PSDs, and then we hand them over to developers, and we expect them to just interpret them and build them perfectly. I'm going to build what I want. Right? That's our assumption. The PSDs often come out looking like this. I love this. Right? This is, I don't know how to draw this. It's shocking. Amazing how many times two people can look at the same thing and describe it differently. I want to go back. Yeah, we get another 5 minutes, right? I go back here. What's happening? We talked a little bit about these two sort of features. In this case, our visual designer was not married to this. And in this case, our visual designer was not married to a 257 pixel vertical slider. Somebody asked earlier, how do you make sure you build the right thing first? One of the easiest ways to make sure that you build the right thing first is don't build in features that don't matter. And how do I figure out which features matter and how do I prioritize? This is creepy, but I need a female volunteer. I don't know how to make it any less awkward, so. Anyone? Perfect. You don't even have to stand up.
Oh, good.
I will be your secretary. What is your name? I forgot already.
Bethany.
Bethany. Tell me your morning routine, Bethany. What are all of the things that you do before you go to work?
All right. I'll shower.
You shower. That sounds good. I like that.
Yeah. I'll put on my makeup.
Makeup. Uh-huh.
I'll do my hair.
Hair. Go ahead.
Get dressed.
Dressed. Keep going.
Find my shoes.
Shoes. Uh-huh.
Make sure I have my laptop.
Laptop, right?
I'm done.
You don't brush your teeth, right?
No.
Okay, good. Ew, yeah.
Yes.
Do you eat?
Oh, yes.
I eat. What else?
Drink a lot of coffee.
Drink coffee. Of course. Most people have that on their list.
Make sure my iPod's charged for my computer.
Aha! That's okay. Charge iPod. Anything else? No?
Get all my stuff. Get my lunch.
Pack lunch, we'll say. Sure. Yeah, seems like a good list. These are your features, the features of your morning. I'm going to give you a project timeline, and you are only allowed to do 3 of these things. Which 3 are you picking?
Shower.
Hmm?
Brushing my teeth.
Okay.
And
Last one's hard, right?
Not dressed.
Are we going to work naked? We might.
well, it's that or coffee, so we'll get dressed.
It's that or coffee. It's a trade-off, right? It's that or coffee. This is what we get faced with every single project. We just don't think about it this way. I have 10 things that I love to do. They're so important. I want them all. I don't have time to do them all. Right? If I force you, you can prioritize. And most people miss this step, to be honest with you. And it makes for a really weird workplace. But
Does it have to be a female because a guy would be wake up, go to work?
yeah, this fails a lot when I pick a dude. He's like, I don't know, I get up and go to work. I was like, do you get dressed? He's like, nah, dude, I was wearing what I wore the night before. Like, women don't ever do that, I've noticed. That's why it had to be creepy and weird.
It's just 3 features. They all begin with S.
3, right? Yeah. We do this. We're faced with this puzzle every single time, but we believe in the myth that we have enough time to get all 10 done. So we half-ass all 10 features, or we work nights, whatever it is that we can do to get all 10 of our features in, we do that thing and we put ourselves in this crazy kind of box. We're not realistic about timelines sometimes, and we're not realistic about prioritization. This is it's kind of sort of a neat exercise. When you find yourself in this conversation of stomping your foot, and it has to be 257 pixels tall because that's the way the composition is. Does it really? Like, is it really worth it? Is that really a priority feature? Is it really integral to the user experience? What we're really going after is the best user experience we can get. Is that integral to the user experience? Do the users care about that extra 43 pixels? I'm good at math. Probably not, right? So those kinds of trade-off conversations, those are the things that we want. So I talk a little bit about two people looking at the same thing. You see something different. We at Unbox have just started using this. If you've used it for a long time, I'd love to hear about it afterward. We started using annotated wireframes. These annotations can apply to wireframes, they can apply to PSDs, they can apply to anything. What I've discovered is kind of this big gap between designers and developers is all of the interactives that happen on the screen. All the drop-downs, the sliders, the different states that a page can take when a button is inactive and when it's not, when text changes colors. All of the things that might change about a design, I can create an awesome PSD, but it forces the developer to make some assumptions about what he or she thinks is happening on the page. Assumptions can save a lot of time. They save a couple minutes. They save me the couple minutes of asking you the question, but they can create hours of rework if I make the wrong assumption, right? So again, when we start talking about collaboration, we start talking about people together, what these annotated wireframes do, and this is all lorem ipsum in case you can't read it, it's not really meant to be readable. It just tells me, it describes what's happening on the page. It describes what's happening with the buttons, describes what's happening with the drop-down. It builds more understanding between designer and developer. It sort of helps them work together, right? Where is the template for this? I don't know. It doesn't exist. I just made one up, and I don't say that to be a jerk. I just made one up using language that makes sense in our organization. I see no reason why you couldn't do the same. Let me ask you, how would you know how the developer wants to consume this thing?
Typically, we just do a Word doc.
A Word doc? It's fair. Like that was my history for 13 years. I did Word docs, and Word docs are cool, but 105-page design documents often end up in the document repository with not a lot of views. Let me ask you the same question again until I get an answer that I want. How would you know how the developer wants to consume? How would you know what is important to the developer to see? Ask them. You should ask them. That's a great answer, right?
It really is.
Oh my God, I have to talk to people again, right? Like, let's go sit down. Hey, I'm thinking about putting some annotations into my PSDs to help you not have to make some assumptions. What kinds of things do you need to know? Do you need to know the values in this dropdown? Annotations, yeah. Do you need to know when this box gets checked and when it doesn't? Do you need to know what happens to this button? Like, tell me. Let's go have a conversation.
I didn't think about annotations.
Yeah, I'm annotating my PSD, right? It's not super pretty, but the consumer for this thing is the developer. It's not the client. It's writing this sort of, it's helping the developer out, and it's helping you, the two of you, develop this joint language. It's building that relationship between the two of you. Last one. So, God, I'm so good with time. Yes. Last one, this one came up a week ago. Another cool thing, I knew nothing about these, I'm not gonna lie. Something called a sprite. A sprite is, somebody's nodding their head, you know what one is? Yes, what is a sprite? Did you nod your head? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
It's just like a little like image. Like
A little image.
I guess I wouldn't know how to describe it, but the context that I have for it is in Pokemon, like the games, you have like little there's a very big following in Pokemon video games in particular.
I love where this is going.
Follow the different sprite versions of Pokemon across the versions.
Oh, right on. Okay. So that's new to me. That's cool. A sprite, as I understand it, and in this context, and it's actually the same. What you just described is the same. It's a background. It's multiple background images consolidated into one. And think of each one of these as having coordinates, if you will. Like I'm playing Battleship, and I'm going to go to A2. And if I go to A2 and I put my window over A2, I get something that looks like this. And this one goes to B1, right? It's all of the images consolidated into one. And it just, the developer sort of tells the code where to go look for this thing using some kind of coordinate system or something. I'm simplifying. What it means to the developer is I only have to write one function. I only have to have one image that I handle, and I'm sort of changing my view of that one image. The developer came to our designer and said, hey, if you write this thing this way, it'll take me 15 minutes to code it instead of 2 hours. Save me an hour and 45 minutes. Again, well, these are little incremental changes that I'm talking about, but they can make a really big difference when you start to pile them up over the course of long projects and over the course of as you pile up little 1% improvements. Really neat kind of to watch, again, that interaction. If the relationship didn't exist between designer and developer, that conversation never takes place. The developer then imports each of these individually, writes 2 hours worth of code, and they move on. They don't really think about it. So those are kind of just three really good examples that I pulled out. Sort of, I wanted to bring kind of real world examples with me. Hopefully you guys get the point. It's about collaboration. It's about finding a shared language. It's about building relationships between designers and developers that may not have existed in the past. It's about helping you all collaborate to get efficient together, and sort of and finding things that work. I think you saw the punchline in the last slide. Our ultimate goal is Canadian world domination, right? Wait. I love this. I have no idea why I put this in here. I love this slide. Dawn's shaking her head because she's like, I didn't put that slide in there. It's not. Our ultimate goal is better UI, UX, right? That's what we want to get to. Agile hopefully gives us a framework to have it. You've seen a couple examples, sort of seen how to prioritize. You've seen how to break stuff up into smaller batches to get it done. That is all I got. And I will take questions. No questions. I have a microphone now. Yes, comment. You pass the microphone around. Sure. No, Rob's actually recording.
Hello.
Check, check. I think it's
even on?
It's on.
Yeah. Oh, okay. The one of the last slides that you showed was the annotation within the PSD. And
yeah.
Curious if you don't see that as going back to documentation, going back to more waterfall, handing over a.
Oh, it is documentation. It's absolutely documentation. Remember, Agile says we value working software over comprehensive documentation. This is not comprehensive documentation. This is a form of documenting. It's probably better, I hope it's better than a 200-page Word document. If it's not, don't do it.
But it could also be handled in a conversation or a piece of paper, sketch,
yeah.
A whiteboard.
Yeah, yes. What I like about this in particular is it also builds me a little bit of a test plan. So when my QA or tester comes back, I can look at this annotated wireframe, and as a QA or test person, I can look and see what these fields are supposed to do and how they're supposed to interact. So I get a little bit of economy there by building in some test plans. Pass the microphone, please. Now we have all kinds of questions.
Well, I assume, and
we have a digital marketing agency, so we deal with this a lot, where the designer needs to also keep up to date with technology, and that it doesn't always happen. The designers don't always like to know, you know, they just want to make a pretty picture and send it on. And, you know, trying to get that person that likes to know the behaviors and have the button change a certain color and put it in there isn't all that easy to find. So, you know.
That's not a question necessarily. If you can survive as an organization drawing pretty pictures and moving on, if that's effective, keep doing that. I'm not an Agile apologist. It does not solve all problems.
But what I'm saying is I would like designers, some of them have this fear of technology and the internet.
I got you. Yeah. So there's 30 people sitting in this room.
Sounds like you need more users.
Go.
I have. Well, and lots of times
it's got to start somewhere. Yeah, like that.
The older designer who hasn't kept up, typically there'll be some new thing, and then they're just dropped off interactive altogether. And you know, it's difficult to find those people that have the really good design skills, but also want to know more about technology and want to know how things work and do some cool feature or dictate some cool feature.
Yeah, so be careful. I'm not suggesting that you go out and learn to write JavaScript or even HTML.
I actually do know how to write it, but I don't write it well.
but you grasp the concept of it.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that you need to go out and do that, so be careful when I say, again, this should be written in a language that everybody understands. It doesn't have to be super tech heavy. In fact, I'd suggest that it not be. Designers and developers have their own language, all to their own. Like to a third party, you walk in the room, there's no difference between kerning and a div. Like, I don't know what those two terms mean. I do, but someone that walks in, I don't know what those things are. Like, so be careful when you use.
Right. Line height is what developers use.
Okay, line height. Instead of kerning, what is kerning?
Well, kerning is actually something
space
different.
between the characters, right? Space between the lines.
Kerning is space.
Leading, thank you.
Leading, that's it.
So use the word line height. Don't use the word leading, right? Find a language that works for the two of you. And I use the two of you. It's not always the same developer, but find that language that works, and you don't have to be overly sort of
technology heavy. Because I'm usually the one
heavy.
translating it. You know.
Well, that's where I make my living, right? Is I speak nerd and I speak English, and sort of I hang out in that space. I don't do either one well. Don't tell Brad, my boss is here.
I was just gonna say, if you need examples of deliverables, like templates like this, Dan Brown has a really good book. It's called Communicating Design. And it shows the what and why and what's the context of use for all these templates.
Dan Brown, Communicating Design?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to ask, you said you teach a class?
I do teach a class.
Can you give me the details?
Yeah, it's so it's a certified Scrum Master class, and what that means is at the end of it, you walk away with 2 days with a $50 piece of paper that says you took a class from me, and then you also get to pay $1,200 to sit in the class. But what it essentially means is you are certified to go be a Scrum Master. That's that role within the Agile team that understands the process and sort of holds teams up. It's sponsored by the Agile Alliance. The guys that put together Agile are super brilliant because they found a way to sell that skill, and they recognize that putting the word certified in front of a class means that your training department's going to pay for it, and if you don't, they're not. So those guys were pretty smart, and what it grants you is a year's worth of certification, and then you pay $50 to kind of re-up.
I mean, because I'm basically the only designer in like the sea of IT people.
Yeah.
And they're all talking about, project plans and project management.
Yeah.
Stuff, and I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, the class, if you can take it, you don't have to take it from me, but I'd suggest that you do. It's any certified Scrum Master, you'll hear the acronym CSM, or any certified Scrum Master class. We teach it. I don't teach it very often because, quite honestly, it's hard to get butts in seats. But we'll teach you around town. There's lots of places you can go around town. All that certification, in order to teach the class, you need to be a certified Scrum trainer, and that's really a rigorous and expensive process to go through. So once you get to that level, whomever you take it from, you'll enjoy your experience. You'll get something out of it. It doesn't have to be through me. Questions? Yeah.
I have 2 questions, actually. So the first one is, you mentioned the slice of cake and
Yes.
that narrow slice that comes up in 2 to 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
What does that actually look like as a deliverable? Is that, so you have a project, is it a bare bone stripped down site? Is it just a part of the site, or is it something altogether different?
Yes, it's something like that. There's no one answer to that question. It could be the scaffolding for the site. So the deliverable might be, I just want to have one button click-throughs to kind of get an idea for how many pages I'm going to have or how many flows it's going to have. And I'm using a website or a mobile technology example there. But it might be one single feature. I want a login feature, and I want to be able to book a hotel room. Those are the only 2 features. I can go to market with those. So I build those 2 features first. And then I layer in this idea of cancellations or reward points or whatever else might go into this website.
So, but the idea being that 2 to 4 week deliverable is something that's push live, that is fully functional.
Potentially
Okay.
shippable.
Okay.
So the product owner decides whether there is enough value to go to market. The scaffolding, probably not enough value to go to market. The login screen by itself, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
As I layer in these features, the product owner says, hey, you know what? There's enough for me to go to market. There's enough for me to derive some business value. I've got enough pennies that I'm going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to release it.
And then my second question has to do with the Scrum team, the designer-developer relationship. I know earlier on you mentioned, so maybe someone's in Denver and someone else is in Mumbai, but the relationship that you're talking about here is very close. It's some of the examples you gave were walking over and saying to the person. How does that work when it's not in the same room, in the same office building?
It works less well.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a well-constructed sentence. It doesn't work as well.
Or how do you make it work?
So there's so many tools. So the Mumbai example is tough because sometimes time zoning can be tricky.
Mm-hmm.
You design something and you throw it over the fence and you wake up in the morning and like magic happened, right? Like all that 12 hours that you were sleeping, something happened. So time zones can be really, really tricky with offshore development, but it doesn't mean that you can't make it work. So I found that 4:30 in the afternoon was the right time, or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Depending on what time of year it is, you're either 12 or 13 hours ahead of Mumbai. So it's either 8 o'clock in the morning. Somebody's making a sacrifice, but you're making a sacrifice to get faster as a team. Will you ever be as fast as a co-located team? No, but it doesn't mean you won't be faster than if you didn't do it at all. Other questions?
Any other questions?
David wants to wrap up now.
No, I don't have a question. I just wanted to hold this, actually.
You look ravishing with that.
Any questions? Who are you wearing? Anyone? Okay. Let's give Doug a big round of applause,
thanks, guys,
please.
very much.